May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC Puba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, preserving the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Alan Senauke. Alan is the abbot of the Berkeley Zen Center. The Berkeley Zen Center has always been my favorite Zen Center to visit. It's just so neat. And it started, I don't know if he and I talk about that. I can't remember because, we talked, a month ago or so. It started, I remember going over there, I think in 66, and there wasn't a Zen Center yet. But then Mel moved in as the abbot in 67, not as the abbot, it was just the caretaker, really. And he stayed. And then he held on to that abbotship until not long ago. And Alan, after many years of standing in the wings, took over. But listen, Alan has done a lot of things, and you're gonna see that. He's had a long career in music and in Buddhist Peace Fellowship and related engaged Buddhism. Anyway, we talk about all that. He's got a book out, and I bring that up right away. It's called Turning Words, Transformative Encounters with Buddhist Teachers. It's an easy read, and it's really neat, and you'll hear about it. He tells some of the stories. At some point, I took a little note when we were making it. He mentions Rinso-in in Japan, and that's Shunryu Suzuki's Japan temple that his son Hoitsu is now the abbot of. So, listen, when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause. And we'll be here to hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever, and we'll give Alan Senauke a call.
Hi, David.
Hi, Alan. How you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Good. So, Alan.
Yes. Hi.
What are you up to? I know you have a new book out, and so I want to hear about that. And I enjoyed it. I've already read it.
Oh, good. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So what I'm up to is, mostly what I'm up to is following the practice here at Berkeley Zen Center.
Yeah.
I've been abbot here for a little more than 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still learning how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I am writing I've got I'm playing with a band for the first time since before the pandemic, which is fun.
Yeah.
And I've been teaching this semester. I've been teaching at Union Theological Seminary, which is really enjoyable.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
So
wow.
Very, very busy on this end.
Yeah. Now your book is Turning Words. Is that right?
Yes, Turning Words, Transformative Encounters with Buddhist Teachers.
Yeah.
Mostly Buddhist teachers.
So how did it come about?
Well, I just started at a certain point a few years ago. I started writing down stories of encounters that I had, things that I went back to again and again, that had transpired between myself and teachers who I heard or that I witnessed. And I just started writing these down, and then I became more thoroughgoing about it and decided I was going to try to make an effort to remember as much as I could while I still have a fairly functional memory and write those stories down. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
and then it took shape. It sort of took shape as a book, and it evolved from there.
Yeah.
So I was very happy that I presented it to Shambhala, and I wasn't expecting. I didn't know what I was expecting. I wasn't, I wasn't pitching it as I don't have an agent, and I wasn't pitching it in an intensive way, but they really liked it. So it's been a pleasure to work with them. And it gets out, it's getting out fairly widely, and I like the opportunity to share these stories.
Yeah. Yeah. Why don't you, can you read us one or tell us one or?
I could tell you one.
Yeah.
I'd rather tell it than read it.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this lately. I think one of the stories is at one point, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 years ago, Sojin Roshi, my teacher, was just kind of musing, reflecting out loud. He said, "Well, everything is really going great here at Berkeley Zen Center, but it could all go just, disappear in a moment." And that's what happened. The pandemic came, and everything that we relied on as a rhythm for practice or as a form of practice instantly disappeared, and all of us had to reconstruct that, including him. And also, it happened. Just to say, this happened while he had recently been diagnosed with cancer, and so the cancer was also moving forward. So, yes, things can go very quickly.
Yeah.
There's some things that we feel are really solid.
Yeah.
Not necessarily so.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, Dogen said something like that. I remember, and I think about it a lot. It's something like there's no power on heaven and earth to assure that you'll be alive in, I don't know, the next minute.
Right. So that's one story. There's a lot of stories, actually, that started digging around. One of them, the book starts actually with a story about an exchange with my father that goes back to about 1973 or so, which was before I had formally taken up Buddhist practice. I was living a life of an activist, and he came out to visit me, and actually he came in during a moment when my first marriage was breaking up, but we kept it a secret from him and my stepmother because we just didn't want to go through a lot of explanations and a lot of tangled emotions. So my wife and I, we were on good terms, but just we didn't feel like we could stay married. So we're driving down 80 in my car, and I think I was driving, and I was driving him, and he turned to me and said, "Are you happy?" And I got angry at him. I said, basically, that's not the point to me. The point is to be useful. And it took me, I think it took me another 40 years to realize that he was actually asking a highly pertinent question. And my answer was only half or less than half right. I wasn't happy. And maybe I was useful and maybe I wasn't. But what I feel like I've learned through our practice is that if I can't really be in contact with happiness, then I'm not going to be useful. And that was all he wanted was, he wanted a sense of fulfillment and joy in my life, which was a wonderful thing to wish for his son.
Yeah.
But I couldn't accept it then.
Yeah. Well,
that's where I start. That's where I start the book, actually.
Yeah. Right. If you want to say anything more on the book, please do. I have another question.
There's not a lot more that I think I need to say. I'm really pleased to get it into people's hands and to get feedback. And I've been getting some feedback. And if one wonders how stories transmit truths, it's an interesting thing. I mean, really, in a sense, these carry some of the they're turning words in the sense that many of the koans that we read are turning words, right? And I'm not glorifying these as koans, but they had that function for me, and I'm curious to know if they spark anything in other people, in readers, and friends, and so forth.
Oh, I'll give you some feedback on the one about me.
Yeah.
I wasn't a board member. I said that to Lori at a meeting, just a general meeting.
Oh, a general meeting in the Richard Baker debrief.
Yeah. When she said why aren't you upset or something like that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I said, I have low standards.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yeah. But that was a story I always remembered. She told it to me, and it's like that had an impact on me.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a time. Richard Baker just turned 87 in a few days ago. 2 days ago or something. And he's like the Energizer Bunny. He's still teaching, and
wow, good for him.
Yeah, amazing. Well, where does this all start? Where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn in December of 1947. In the great blizzard of 1947, actually. And spent my first couple of years in Brooklyn, and then we moved out to Great Neck on Long Island, and that's where I lived until I went to college. And it was there that really my questioning mind evolved. And I was lucky to have just an incredible group of friends, just really brilliant and creative, and we are still friends. Most of us.
So how so? How did?
What do you mean?
How did your questioning mind evolve? How did that start?
Well, I think the way it started was perhaps it was born in me. Perhaps it was a genetic or a cultural predisposition by being Jewish. And also by circumstance, I went to private school for the first 8 years of my life. And it was a pretty much white Anglo-Saxon Protestant dominated school. There were only like 2 Jewish kids in my class. And I was, I felt marginalized.
Oh.
By what was not usually, there were some hints of overt anti-Semitism, some from teachers, but just in terms of social exclusion, I never felt included, and so I had to really sustain myself by my own interests and my own mind. And I was given tremendous freedom to read anything or explore anything by my parents. They never told me what not to digest in terms of reading. And I read voraciously. I watched television voraciously. And at 9th grade, I went into the public school system in Great Neck, which was, at the time, it was a very progressive, very highly rated public school system. And it was also probably a majority Jewish. And I will say, from that point on, I instantly had friends, and those are friends for life now, for 60 years. So there wasn't anything wrong with me socially. I just, I was in a difficult setting until I got there.
I just want to make one comment. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas, and I really didn't know much or hear much about anti-Semitism until I I started, I got involved in civil rights and SDS and meeting people from the East Coast and living in Mexico and being in California. Where I grew up, the Jewish students were, to me, just seemed fully integrated and, got into the social clubs and, I truly could say that a lot of my best friends were Jewish when I grew up, and one of my best wives later.
Uh-huh.
But I just, I'd read Exodus, and I knew about anti-Semitism, terrible anti-Semitism, worse than that. But I just, I just had like two memories of things that happened in my entire childhood. I knew there were some people that were, I just thought of them, and my friends would have thought of them as ignorant, but it came up so little we didn't really even think about it.
Right.
So that was interesting. East Coast, once I started, being Jewish was just such a different thing for people that came from the East Coast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, just wanted to say that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I remember when I started going down south to play music, I was talking to an old friend from that scene, and she said, this is 1975. She said, well, we never met anybody Jewish before.
Mm.
It's interesting.
Mm.
So that was really, cultural waters that I swam in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
not religious waters. The problem there with the religion was that I was forced to go to Hebrew school, and it was horrible. And it was a complete disconnect because there was no Jewish practice in my home, except when we went to see my grandparents in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And my Jewish education was strictly to, out of respect for my mother's father. It didn't have anything to do with what happened at home. So it was really, that was also quite disconnected. And that was interesting because what I understood was that I had an aversion to ritual or any kind of religious thinking. And it wasn't until I really took up Zen that I realized that was not the case, that I really loved the ritual so long as it had a meaning to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So you're back in college when your
right.
questioning began. What sort of questioning?
Well, I was actually in high school when the questioning began.
Oh, all right.
Ultimately, the question is, what am I doing here on the planet? And also a lot of questioning about how to look at the world. So one of the things that happened was from early in high school, I was interested in beat poetry.
Yeah.
And beat literature, and that led me to reading Chinese and Japanese poetry.
Oh.
And that was really resonant with me, and still is. And what was resonant was in this highly competitive environment that I existed in this, upper middle class high school where everybody was kind of performance oriented, what I saw in the Chinese and Japanese poetry was an aesthetic that really paid attention to what was ordinary and recognized that there's something transcendent in that ordinariness. And that it wasn't about achievement. And that was a wonderful medicine for me to bring me into balance. And so along with that, part of the other questioning was a very intense questioning of the social and political realities that we were living. So I became very involved in civil rights work in high school, and then in other in ban the bomb activities, and then in other anti-war activities as they emerged. And that was also a through line, and still is. But by the time I got to college, I was really very much on an artistic track, at the same time as the political world was just on fire, and the country was on fire. And I had landed in a hotbed of it at Columbia. And so I was very involved in I became the editor of the Columbia Literary Magazine, the Columbia Review. But also I was involved as it developed. I took part in the Columbia strike in the spring of 1968, and I was part of a crew that lived in the president of the university's office for a week until we got beaten and arrested. And that was my education. So it was on this two tracks, these political and the artistic. And that summer, I came out. We decided we had to get out of New York. And so we came out, we got an apartment in Berkeley. And also, at that point, we decided, having read 3 Pillars of Zen, that we wanted to try practicing Zen. So we found the Berkeley Zen Center, which had been around for about a year. And through that, and so we practiced there on quite a regular basis through the summer, and a couple of days a week also we would go in and sit at Sakoji. And that was the summer. And when I returned to New York, I returned with the idea of continuing a practice of Zen, and I started studying Japanese. But the political realities they were overwhelming. And at that point, it seemed like these are two quite distinct paths that did not intersect. And I hadn't really met the people for whom it did intersect. And they were around. Gary Snyder was around, Dick Baker to some extent. Aiken Roshi was around, but I don't think he had begun teaching yet. Anyway, it wasn't until I really took up formal practice that I understood, or I could see where the intersection was between a social awareness or awareness of social transformation and the work of Zen.
Yeah.
So that's a capsulated story.
Yeah. So can you elaborate more on your last point?
Yeah. There was not much. Well, one of the things that happened when, there was not much relationship, there was not much talk about at Berkeley Zen Center when I was there, or in Three Pillars of Zen, or in anything that I was reading, which there was not a lot. There was D.T. Suzuki, and there were Paul Repp's books, and there was Alan Watts, but none of them were talking about what we might now call engaged Buddhism, which is not to say that they didn't have a social awareness, but they weren't really weaving these together. And I think in subsequent years, it really was woven together here in this country. And the fact of the matter is that it's been, and this is one of the things that I'm teaching and learning at Union this year, is what a rich tapestry of social awareness and what we might call engaged Buddhism has, existed in Asia for, certainly from the beginning of the 20th century. And I think that really affected people over here. But also people here were drawing from the activities and syntheses of other religious traditions of Judaism, Christianity, etc., that were making similar connections between social issues and spiritual issues.
That I think of something there is that when Diane Goldschlag came out in '68, it was Jim Forrest who sent her. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the name? And he had brought Thich Nhat Hanh to Tassajara in '67.
Right.
And he was with the Fellowship of Reconciliation. Is that it?
That's right.
Got it.
He was with Fellowship of Reconciliation, which then became was kind of the Buddhist Peace Fellowship existed as one of those fellowships of reconciliation.
Yeah. So
when folks started that in 1978 in Hawaii, but it started actually as a chapter of Fellowship of Reconciliation, and then the FOR said, "Why don't you start a Buddhist fellowship?"
Fellowship of Reconciliation. I think its roots were more Catholic. Is that right?
No.
No.
Its roots were probably Protestant pacifist.
Oh, really?
But it had these different religious organizations that were by denominationally independent fellowships. But I think some of the Catholic activists were very well known and were completely connected to FOR, like the Berrigans and others of the real active nonviolent figures, amazing people. And it wasn't a big world, so everybody knew each other.
The earliest incident of that I know of at Zen Center with Barton Stone in like '63 or something, going on that march to Moscow from California with David Dellinger. Is that his name?
Yeah, Dave Dellinger, right.
And a group of others. And that's where he met Martha. Yeah. And they went all the way to Moscow. That's great.
I didn't know that about Barton.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Suzuki Roshi visited him in prison. He went to prison here for, it was a sort of weird charge getting in the way of nuclear weapons or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
yeah, those people were really tough. They were strong.
Yeah. Yeah. And Richard Baker was involved in some of the, God, I can't remember the details, anti-nuclear, but before the nuclear freeze, much earlier, like in the 60s, having to do with, I don't know, it was over on the East Bay. That would be an interesting thing to put together, get the details down on that.
It's probably, yeah. Well, you might ask him about that.
Yeah, I will. Good idea.
So I sort of inherited all this stuff by the time I showed up here to really establish practice, which is in 84, there was a real Buddhist Peace Fellowship presence, and its sort of center of gravity had moved from Hawaii basically to Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to know everybody, and then in 91, I was hired as the director.
Mm.
And that was probably, that and coming here were probably the two primary catalysts for the life I have.
Mm.
I feel like that's when my life, those elements sort of snapped my life into focus. That and meeting Lori. But meeting Lori was also connected to that. So.
How so?
Well, I met her at Tassajara, so it was completely connected to the practice, and she always encouraged me. She and Sojin totally encouraged me to really throw myself into Buddhist Peace Fellowship.
Wow, you sure have.
Well, I did.
Yeah.
And really, a number of us really built the organization. It's now in somewhat dormant state, but for a while it was, it's a very important network, a very important piece of history.
Yeah, and it was important to us because through you, you said you had a contact in Kuala Lumpur, and so we got to know Mai and Vidya, and he was very involved. And not only was he involved with,
with
what? Pardon?
With International Network Engaged Buddhists.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't know quite how to say it. I mean, Vidya was going to Burma to talk with monks who were persecuting Muslims, in Sri Lanka to talk to Buddhist monks who were persecuting Tamils. And I don't know if he went to Thailand to talk to Buddhist monks who were, at odds with Muslims there. But I asked him, I said, well, what on earth can you do? He said, well, really, mainly just listen.
That's right. But we, he was an early INEB friend, and at a difficult point in his life, he showed up unannounced on our doorstep, and we took him in for months in our house.
Oh, is that right?
We were, yeah, our house became a way station for a lot of people traveling through. A lot of people, monks, actually, and lay people, laymen, lay women, and we had 2 Tibetan refugees living with us at different times. We had a Saffron Revolution monk from Burma living here. It's like we've kept an open house.
Wow.
Me and Lori, and we like that.
Yeah.
It's been a great gift to be able to share our lives in that way, and pretty much, fortunately, our kids liked it too.
Yeah. Another person I met through you when Clay and I were in Pune in India. We stayed at the Dalit house, the Untouchables.
You stayed at Minuski.
Yeah, and that was a connection through you. And that was really interesting, and we meditated with them, and he took us to a really interesting restaurant, and he brought out a copy of Crooked Cucumber and had me sign it. And anyway, yeah, that was interesting. But you were just in Asia recently, weren't you, on some Buddhist Peace Fellowship something?
No, it was INEB, International Network of Engaged Buddhists. We had a conference in South Korea.
Oh.
And that was the first time I'd been to South Korea. It was very interesting. Really interesting, peculiar place.
Oh, I love South Korea. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a wonderful conference, and then a whole lot of people ended up including Vidya. We got COVID the last day.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was really fucked up.
Oh. And that wasn't that long ago, was it? When was that?
No, it was like the end of October.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it brings up. It makes me want to see them. Yeah.
Me too.
We stayed in their school.
Well, great. Right.
And we learned a lot about the problem between Chinese and the Bumiputra, the native population there, or the the Muslims. It was more serious than anything I experienced here. Well,
it's interesting. Malaysia is what you would call a plural society, which is different than pluralistic. Plural, culturally, what it means is that you have these different groups, and they interact very freely in the marketplace, but that's it. There's commercial intercourse, but socially, religiously, culturally, they maintain very independent identities. And I think it's quite different from what at least we're trying to do here. even though these separate identities do exist, but more and more there's the intersection and blending of them. But in some places, there's very little. In some places in Asia, and I'm sure other places. I'm sure in places in Africa, there's very little interaction. It's just like a real, just very clear social distinctions.
Yeah.
Among the different cultural ground.
Yeah. Yeah. One interesting thing is, there's the Chinese in Malaysia tend to be better educated, and they're better at business than the
yeah.
I just think of Bhumi Putra, which sort of means the children. The Bhumi's earth, and Putra is like, I don't know, like sun or something. I'm not quite sure. It just means like native son,
Mm-hmm.
I said to Vidya, it's really weird because he has really important government jobs, and that Chinese tend to get overlooked for anything the government hands down, like students that go abroad. It's much harder for Chinese students that are excelling to, be sent by the government abroad to study and stuff. But I said, Vidya was, at one point he was in charge of the dengue response in Malaysia. And at another point, he was in charge of the sort of assignment of everybody with like a social security number. I said, how come, I said, you're not Bhumi Putra. How come you're doing so well? He said, I'm more Bhumi Putra than the president. He goes to Indonesia to his father's grave.
Well, he's a good person.
Yeah.
And smart. Yeah.
Well,
those are long-term, those are long-term friendships now, 30 years or more.
Wow.
We know each other's children, and we've watched them grow up, and it's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to go back to when you came to Zen Center in 1968 in the summer.
Yeah.
Did you see or meet or hear Suzuki Roshi?
No, he was at Tassajara.
Mm-hmm. And
that's what I remember anyway.
Well, he was.
I don't remember. I don't remember anybody basically. I remember Mel. One of the things at that time, both at City Center and also at Berkeley Zen Center, I don't think I had any conversation with anybody.
Yeah.
And nobody reached out to have a conversation with me. And, I was shy and I was watching, taking stuff in. I have some regrets about that, but it's okay. That's what happened.
Yeah. Well, it was Sokoji. It wasn't City Center, like you said earlier.
Yeah, it was Sokoji.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first time at City Center, it's interesting. My first time coming to City Center was, I was still living in San Francisco. I went there one evening. We were musically accompanying Allen Ginsberg.
Oh, neat.
And I remember we were in the corner of what's now the Buddha Hall. We were set up there. And that was my first time there, which probably was not so long after it moved into that building.
Oh, yeah, I can believe it because they wouldn't use the Buddha Hall that way after it got
Well,
established.
I think it wasn't the Buddha Hall, I don't think.
Yeah, well, that's very early. So that was like in maybe it moved into that building in November, like 19th or something of 1969. So
Right. So this was probably in 70 or 71.
no, it would have been within, I think, within early 70 for the
Maybe.
Buddha Hall not to be the Buddha Hall yet.
Well, maybe it was the Buddha Hall. I don't know. But anyway, that's where we were.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's interesting. Generally, they do things like that in the dining room.
Yeah, it wasn't the dining room. I remember walking into the space, and then I remember walking into the space again later. So anyway.
Uh-huh. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we were functionally Alan's band for a little while, at least here in San Francisco.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
Well, when so you were out there in 68 and then you went back to Columbia, right?
I went back to finish a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, one more year.
And then did you go right back?
No, then I moved to Woodstock to be in a rock and roll band.
Oh, really?
Yep. Right after graduating in 69, my band moved up to Woodstock.
Wow.
The summer of Woodstock.
So were you at Woodstock?
Nope. We had another gig someplace else.
Oh.
That weekend. And it's okay. I mean, we all we read about was like horrible traffic jams and lots of mud, and that was not my idea of fun.
Yeah. Well, that's neat. Well, go on. So how did you get from Woodstock to California? Was there?
Well, I got fired from the band and moved back to New York City and worked for a year as a taxi driver.
Oh.
And some of just a group of us who had been really tight in college had this idea of moving out to California and starting a magazine. And we did that. We moved out to San Francisco and we published several issues of a very peculiar multimedia kind of magazine that was part avant-garde poetry, part underground comics. It had recipes. It had all kinds of stuff. It was a magazine that was called Fits, Fits. And we published a couple of sort of tabloid editions of it, but we also were writing poems and putting out books. And somewhere along the line, we felt that we should take control of the means of production. So we went to printing school at City College in San Francisco. It was a program run by some of the union printers in the city. It was a really good program. And we learned how to do small press work. And we bought 2 presses and set up a printing shop in the heart of the Mission. And that shop, which was also called Fits, Fits, continued for about, 6 or 7 years. It moved its location and became, sort of a pivotal radical print shop for movement functions in the city.
Huh.
And so I learned to be a printer. I got quite good at it. But I was also playing music, and my marriage was breaking up, and I had an opportunity to join a band that was in Ithaca, New York. And so I did that. I moved back east in the summer of 74, I think. And that band lasted about a year. And the long story short, I was invited by a college friend to be a co-editor of Sing Out, the national folk song magazine.
Oh yeah,
in New York. So when the band broke up, I moved to Brooklyn, and for 4 or 5 years I worked at Sing Out.
Oh yeah, I remember Sing Out. Sure, I sort of associated with the Weavers and Pete Seeger.
Yeah, well, Pete was on the board, and I knew him. I mean, that was a great job, like the job at BPF. I mean, I just got to meet everybody.
Yeah, neat. I heard them when I was like senior in high school, or had just graduated from high school. They were playing at TCU, Texas Christian University. I was into that folk music stuff then, it was wonderful. I loved it, and they were very socially engaged.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, that's what the end of them was. They were blacklisted, basically.
Yeah, and Woody Guthrie, there's sort of a continuation of Woody Guthrie's lineage or something in a way, wouldn't you say?
Well, absolutely. They were really a continuation of what existed as the Almanac Singers, which dates from the early 40s. It's all. I know that history really, really well. And, I've been kind of a student of that as well. So you can see I've had a bunch of lives.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Okay. One thing I think of there is Lead Belly.
Yeah.
He had a peripheral relationship to that, wouldn't you say?
No, I would say he had a pivotal relationship to that.
Oh, is that right?
He was in that circle.
Oh.
I still have a bunch of records that predate. They're records on the Stinson label, and they kind of document. They're not documentary; they're records, but they're. You had Woody Guthrie and Leadbelly and Pete Seeger, all these people singing and playing together.
Oh my gosh!
They were on the same scene, and it was a left scene.
Wow, that's amazing.
And Leadbelly was like, when I started playing folk music, which was in 1961, some of the first things that I heard, because the library in the town where I grew up somebody had seeded a whole lot of Folkways albums to the library, and so I just inhaled all this Leadbelly and Woody Guthrie stuff. And it's all just completely, it's just imprinted on my brain.
You know, that makes me think of my sister lived a block up from the Tassajara Bakery. She was on Clayton, and the home she and her husband then moved into, well, first it had Keene, I think Keane, on in a copper plate, and the words were spelled out in holes on the copper plate. And it was Walter Keane, the artist who did the Big Eyes. Actually, his wife did the Big Eyes. Had lived there. But after that, Bob Trueff and Jessica Mitford lived in that home. And wow. And you know, and he was like probably the best known left-wing lawyer in the Bay Area,
right?
You know, and she was a well-known writer. And one night, Leadbelly slept in that home.
I'm not surprised. And that's also on Clayton Street. Also, is where the San Francisco Folk Music Club was.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
And we knew. I guess it was Benji Trueff, the son.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I knew Benjamin. Yeah. And Paul Disco, you know, was best friends with Benji when they were kids.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, yeah. I have to talk to Paul.
Yeah.
You know, Paul is, Paul has been sitting with us on Monday mornings.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
And he's been coming and just sitting here, coming to Zazen on, I think on Tuesday mornings.
Yeah. Oh.
So I'm in pretty regular contact with him. One of our residents is his assistant now.
Oh, really? Really? Huh.
Yep.
Huh. Well, Paul grew up in a pretty much in a communist home, right?
Yeah.
And then you have Lou and Blanche. I don't know if there was any crossover there, but yeah. All right. So yeah, this is interesting to me. So
I need to go soon, but maybe we're gonna have to do part 2 or something.
Yeah, we can do that. Look, why don't we do that? Because there's more ground we can cover. Maybe it's only 30 minutes, but if you need to go, because you're on the East Coast, you're still over there in Ithaca.
No. Yes. No, I'm back.
You're back.
I moved back.
Oh yeah, and you'd started the print shop and all that. Oh yeah. All right. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I got lost there, and I remember now.
Right.
So wait a minute.
But we only gotten 1976.
Yeah. All right. So why don't we pick up there? You know, whenever. I can tell you, I'm a couple of months ahead on making the podcast.
Okay.
Because I put up one a week.
I'm not in any rush.
Well, I think it would be better to do it soon. While
yeah. Oh no, that's fine.
Yeah. So you just tell me when this is the best time for me to call. You just tell me what day.
I think next Monday is good, but let me confirm that and send you an email.
Yeah, sure.
So like same
that'd
time,
be good for me.
A week later.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, that was really interesting.
I hope all is. Yeah, thank you. I'd love seeing a picture of you with Maya.
Oh, did we get a picture? Yeah.
On Facebook, yeah.
Did we put it on Facebook or did she?
She did.
Oh, I'm going to share it. Okay. Yeah, we really enjoyed seeing her. It was really good.
Yeah, that's great.
I was very impressed with her. And I don't, I don't quite know what's happening with Zen Center with this, so many people at one level of seniority, moving out. My experience with Maya was she's got a really good, solid presence that would be, you don't want to move. It seems like it'd be good for her to stay longer. I also think it would be good for Reb to stay longer. I don't think he should go to any retirement home, but I don't know. I'm just from a distance. I really am not there.
Yeah, well, I'm not there either. So
yeah,
there's a lot I don't understand about the ins and outs of Zen Center. So
right.
let's leave it there. So let's talk next week.
Okay, very good. You take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, take care, David. Bye-bye.
So thank you very much, Alan Senauke. That was good. Yeah, that's good for you. You haven't kept your head in the sand. Yeah, very admirable. I was mentioning all these people leaving Green Gulch. I heard recently that Reb Anderson and Linda Ruth Cutts and her husband, Steve Weintraub, are staying for a few more years. That's good. I thought there should be staggered leave. Staggered leave. That reminds me of a great old song. You remember that? Stagger leave. Yeah. Anyway, that's good. And Steve Weintraub, had a terrible bicycle accident. Here he is. He's probably around my age. I don't know exactly. I'm 78. And he was riding, he was preparing to join his son for this long, probably hundreds of miles bicycle trip in Oregon. So he was riding from Green Gulch to Point Reyes, which is along Highway 1, very windy roads, a lot of ups and downs. I mean, serious bike riding. He's just out for a ride. So I think he's coming back, but I'm not positive about that. But I think, anyway, at some point he was coming down a hill, pretty steep. This 2-lane road, cliffs on his right. And, and then it swings. It made a sharp turn, and he didn't make the turn, and so he skidded and he broke a bunch of stuff and punctured a lung, and but he's okay. I mean, he's got an arm in a sling. He broke an arm, broke some ribs. If I recall, he broke 6 ribs. Anyway, he's written a couple of reports on how he's doing, and he's recovering well, and his spirits were high right away. He had to be helicoptered out of there. Well, he might not have been helicoptered from that spot, but he was eventually over to Walnut Creek. I'm not sure. Anyway, he says there's nothing that's going to permanently disable him. It'll all heal. That's good. Anyway, get well soon, Steve. And hey, Alan, onward ho, continue the good work. This is D.C. Poobah of Cuke Archives and Cuke Audio, coming to you from Sleepy Sanur with Doggett Bandita, guest Doggett Bumbita, Bumbu, which means spice in Indonesian. It's not Bumbu's real name, but you've probably heard me mention that. His name is Bumble. That's too hard for Indonesians to say, and we got a lot of them go through this house and are here during the day and stuff. So our housekeeper immediately started saying Bumbu. So that's cool. And so anyway, Bumbu and Katrinka and Bondi and I, we're all wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.